George Soros, the Democratic Party, and Hillary Clinton. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. As you may know, the 85-year-old billionaire is a far-left fanatic whose open society organization advocates no borders anywhere in the world. According to Soros, everyone should be able to go wherever they want for any reason and stay there. Recently, hackers believed to be backed by Russia exposed more than 2,000 documents connected to Soros and his open society. The information very disturbing. Soros has given about $10 million to groups opposed to the policies of Israel. He has funded individuals accusing Israel of war crimes. He has given a variety of grants to people who literally hate the Jewish state of Israel. In addition, Soros has funded investigations of individuals here in the USA who are opposed to radical Islam. People like Pamela Geller, Frank Gaffney, Liz Cheney, and Cliff May. Mr. May will be here in just a few moments. Finally, George Soros has donated about $13 million to the Democrats this election cycle. That includes $7 million to a Hillary Clinton super PAC. 12 years ago, here's what Mrs. Clinton said about George Soros.
We have been given an extraordinary blessing, and at this moment in time, our country needs us. And we need people like George Soros, who is fearless and willing to step up when it counts.
Now, to be fair, that soundbite is dated, but the Clinton campaign is accepting money from Soros this year, as stated, and that may present a problem for the secretary. You may remember that Donald Trump got hammered by the media for not disavowing David Duke quickly enough. Duke, of course, a far-right hater. But now we have a far-left individual, Soros, bent on harming Israel, America's strongest ally in the Middle East. So how will the media cover that? Again, Soros, one of the biggest donors to the Democratic Party. Talking Points believes the mainstream press will largely ignore the Soros story, even though it's very important. Does the Democratic Party advocate open borders worldwide, a situation that would make it easy for Islamic terrorists to kill at will anywhere? Does the Democratic Party support the enemies of Israel? Do Jewish voters even know what's happening? Again, a major situation brought to you by Russian hackers and presented to a largely apathetic press when it comes to reporting the truth about the upcoming election. Summing up, the Democratic Party must comment on George Soros and his activities. We've requested a statement from the DNC, and we will let you know tomorrow if they reply. And that's a memo. Now for the top story reaction. Joining us from Washington is the aforementioned Cliff May, president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. First of all, do you know anything more about Soros and his crew stalking you or whatever they're doing?
Well, it wasn't news that we were being trolled, targeted for delegitimization and defamation. And as you know, Bill, I run a think tank, a policy institute formed after 9/11. It focuses on national security. That means we focus largely on jihadism, Islamism, radical Islam, call it what you will. We knew there were these various individuals on Twitter. They were tweeting against us. They were publishing articles, mostly in left-wing journals, about us, trying to dig up dirt on us. What we didn't know until last weekend was that George Soros was giving them hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to do this. That came as a surprise.
All right, so they're paid assassins to try to get you and the other people we mentioned. Now, I don't understand why Soros would single you out when your organization is basically exposing a major threat to the United States and the world, Islamic jihad. That's what you do. So why would Soros want to muzzle you or hurt you?
You know, this was worse 5 years ago than it is now, but it's not over. There are a lot of those who think, look, this is violent extremism. It has no relationship whatsoever to Islam. You can't even talk about that. If you say, look, not that we have a problem with Islam, but I would say we have a problem with movements within Islam, then you must be an Islamophobe. And I don't mind if people want to debate me, argue with me. People come on your show and debate. It's very edifying. It's very entertaining. But what they want to do when they call you an Islamophobe is they want to shut you down. They want to get you out of the debate.
It's like a homophobe or a bigot, a racist and all that. But why does he want to shut you down? Is George Soros loony enough to think that an open border world, a borderless world, where ISIS could move wherever they want with any problem, is a safe world, is a good thing? Is he that crazy?
Apparently, there's even evidence to show that he looks upon the refugee crisis in Europe, and it's a terrible crisis, as an opportunity for him to further his ideas and his policies. And as you pointed out, in a Middle East that is melting down, where you have genocide taking place among Christian, Yazidi, and other communities, what he's doing is targeting the one open society in the whole region, and that's Israel. And it's particularly ironic that as he's pursuing what is a kind of McCarthyism, he is the founder of the Open Societies Foundation. How does an open society foundation try to shut down debate, try to demonize and delegitimize Israel, and try to do all the kinds of things it's doing, like taking advantage of the refugee crisis?
I think it's safe to say that by taking $13 million from George Soros, the Democratic Party has some explaining to do. Do they not?
Look, imagine if the Koch brothers, I don't know them, and that if they tried to demonize groups on the right, groups on the left, because they were too soft on the Muslim Brotherhood. This would be a big story, it seems to me, in the liberal press. Why isn't it, as you suggest, why isn't this a story, except in conservative media, that you have George Soros pursuing these things? And yes, it is something that should be considered, since he is a huge supporter of all these left-wing causes, and yes, of Democrats.
Well, he's the second biggest donor, I believe, at this point for the Democratic Party this election cycle. Yet, as you pointed out, and we're not a conservative show, as you know, Mr. May. I mean, this is a really interesting story. I mean, how an American billionaire can pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to attack you and other people who object to Islamic terrorism. I mean, that's the crux of the story. And then that very same person involved in that and delegitimizing Israel is one of the biggest funders of the Democratic Party. That's huge. That's a huge story. That would be like the Klan coming up with money and pumping it into the Republican Party. I mean, think about it. The Klan, a racist crew, all right, who wants to put Jews and blacks and minorities in a bad position, okay? And it's horrifying what they do, all right? As opposed to Soros, a far-left crank who wants to harm Israel and wants to shut you up. I mean, I don't understand the big difference between Soros and David Duke. Do you?
I don't, and I think that members of the more liberal and more progressive press ought to be answering why this isn't newsworthy, why only certain things are newsworthy, and why somebody far to the left and further to the left than they are, why they won't investigate, report, cover, and talk about these things.
Where is this?
And where is it? I don't think you're going to see it in tomorrow's papers.
Now, to be fair, we looked for connections between Soros and President Obama. We did not find any. In fact, the two had a falling out of some kind. But Hillary Clinton, you know, she's $7 million already into her campaign from Soros. So, again, we need to get to the bottom of this. And, Mr. Mayor, we appreciate you coming on this evening.
Glad.
Next on the rundown, a Democrat will reply to our investigation. Then later, President Obama orders more accused terrorists released from Guantanamo Bay. Continue now with our lead story. Radical leftist George Soros, donating $13 million to the Democratic Party so far, is exposed by Russian hackers. Here now in New York City, Dr. Jeannie Zeno, who teaches political science at Iona College. As a Democrat, how do you react to what we just told the folks?
You know, I mean, look, George Soros is a billionaire philanthropist. He has raised an awful lot of money for democratic causes, causes that people on the left care about. He has donated money, you know, and you look at all the people who have raised money who haven't donated, all the billionaires who aren't giving. And you have to give him credit for that. And then I think you look at the hacking and you see some of the things coming out and it makes people uncomfortable. But I'm not sure you can blame George Soros or Hillary Clinton for the fact that we live in a political system that allows money to be spent in this way.
You're deflecting the issue. So what you're saying is Mussolini made the Italian trains run on time, so you have to give him credit, even though he was a fascist pig.
I am half Italian, so I'm not going to respond to that.
That argument doesn't hold weight, because what we're dealing with now is we're dealing with a man who we now know provided hundreds of thousands of dollars to discredit Americans like Cliff May and Liz Cheney, who were simply trying to protect the country against Islamic terrorism, number one. Number two, is donated millions of dollars to try to run down Israel. All right? So now, how as a Democrat do you process those two facts?
You know, look, if you look at the foundation, it is $13 billion in 33 years. That is an awful lot of money. It has gone an awful lot of places. When you're dealing with that amount of money, yes, it's going to go places that make certain people uncomfortable.
But this is a Soros-directed. This is his philosophy.
Absolutely.
Now, the Democratic Party is accepting his money.
Absolutely.
Right?
As the Republican Party would as well.
Let's keep it with the Democrats, Doctor, with all due respect. All right? They're accepting the money. Do they have an obligation to explain whether they support Soros's vision of open borders everywhere in the United States, his vision of denigrating Israel? To the Democratic Party, does the Democratic Party, Donna Brazile as the head, have an obligation to explain that to you, a Democrat?
I think they absolutely have to be transparent about where that money is coming from and what it is directed to. I absolutely agree with that.
But we know where it's coming from and where it was directed to. Do they have to explain why they're accepting
Well, I don't think the argument that the Democratic Party is anti-Israel is going to hold any water. So, I do believe in transparency. If they are accepting money, which they are, they need to say where it's coming from and where it's going. And if you want that money regulated, it would be incumbent on all of us to get together, which I firmly believe, and regulate that money.
Well, look, that's a whole different debate.
But it's not a whole different debate.
Yes, it is, because this
if it's not regulated, how do you control
this investigation is very personal. It's not a policy investigation. Here's a man giving an enormous amount of money to the Democrats, who believes that we should not protect ourselves at all and allow anyone in the world in here at any time. That's flat out dangerous. And as a man who's funding anti-Israel people to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. That's personal. And I'm surprised as a Democrat that you don't take it personally.
I do take
it puts you, your family, and every Jew in Israel in danger.
I do take it personally, but here is also a man who has funded women's issues, equal rights,
all right, we're back to the trains
justice.
on time again.
But listen, there is a point to be made. If that money is not going in a place that the Democratic Party is comfortable with, then yes, it should be discussed by Democrats. But that is not all the money, and that's not where all the money is going to.
Nobody is saying it's all the money. You can give money to poor children and still be a villain. And still be a villain.
Absolutely, but I don't think that George Soros qualifies as a villain.
You don't?
No, and I would like to see the evidence that suggests that he does. You show me that evidence.
You just heard Cliff May, an American citizen.
And I respect Cliff.
Who he's trying to destroy because of his free speech opinion that the jihadists are bad for America.
I am not in favor
That's not a bad thing?
I am not in favor of destroying Cliff May or anybody
else. Well, that's what Soros is doing.
But this is not what the Democrats are responsible for. What are they responsible for? If they are getting donations, they're responsible for being transparent about where they're coming from and what they're targeted to.
And explaining why they're accepting them.
And where the money is going, Bill. Where is the money going? It is not going to discredit Cliff May.
If this were the opposite, if some guy, some kooky far-right person was given this kind of money to the Republicans, this would be page one in every newspaper, and CNN would lead with it 24/7.
I would say the same thing. But you know what? In terms of the media, it's after ratings. It's not after that.
All right.
How long have you been friends with George Soros? How long? How long have you been friends with George Soros?
I don't know. I've known him for, I suppose, since he was trying to help the Balkans after the Bosnian War. Can you do me a favor and put that back? Don't you be like it? Hey,
But nearly half of your financial sector donations appear to come from just two wealthy financiers, George Soros and Donald Sussman, for a total of about $10 million.
Move on, and Soros have given almost 90% of their funding to Hillary. Now, they're giving about 10% to Sanders to have some control in case he beats her. But they're all in, basically, 90% for her. So that's confirmation. So this is a big deal, folks.
I think everybody in the country has now heard about these violent protests in Chicago, which are being blamed on supporters of Bernie Sanders. Our this is a false flag. These demonstrators are flying under a false banner. They are not Sanders supporters by and large. This is an operation directed by supporters of Hillary Clinton, paid for by George Soros and Move On, by David Brock at Media Matters from America, also funded by Soros, and also by the reclusive billionaire Jonathan Lewis.
We have a right to speak. I mean, we are law-abiding people. We're people that work very hard. We're people that have built this country and made this country great. And we're all together, and we want to get along with everybody. But when they have organized, professionally staged wise guys, we've got to fight back. We've got to fight back.
How long have you been friends with George Soros?
I don't know. I've known him for, I suppose, since he was trying to help the Balkans after the Bosnian War.
Do me a favor, put that back. I'll give you right in the
America is in a crisis situation right now. And during the months and years ahead, we are all going to see things we never thought possible in our country. And unfortunately, the majority of the population is totally unprepared for what is about to happen. Now, I'm talking about the attempted globalist takeover of our country. This is a plan to divide and conquer America. And so far, it is working. Right now, the global banking cartels and the UN are using a wave of Islamic migrants to completely destroy the sovereignty of Western nations. We've all seen what's been going on in Europe with the migrant crisis, engineered, by the way, by the globalists. And guess what? We're next. Because George Soros, public enemy number one, and perhaps the best-known New World Order globalist, says Europe's refugee crisis should be accepted as the new normal. And that means new opportunities for Soros organizations and the UN to influence immigration policies on a global scale. Meanwhile, it's no secret that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton both want to dramatically increase illegal immigration into America. In fact, Hillary wants to allow Syrian refugees in numbers far greater than Obama ever dreamed of. I mean, we're talking on the same level or on the same scale as Europe or worse. And it's no secret that George Soros is one of Hillary's biggest campaign donors. This guy is dumping millions and millions of dollars into Hillary's campaign. And if their plan goes into effect and succeeds, you will no longer recognize this country. America as you know it, over, gone. In fact, the most likely outcome of a migrant crisis, of race riots and open borders is civil war, because the globalists want to burn this baby to the ground.
Well, the police chief has come out and pointed out that the problem the last 3 nights in Milwaukee, after a black police officer shot a black armed man with a felony record, was stirred up by the Communist Party that had been brought in from Chicago. And that is what we experience basically every single time. Now, I want to be clear here. This is not about a referendum on the police. It's not about saying the police are perfect or there aren't bad cops or legislatures aren't passing bad laws that are unconstitutional and putting police officers in an unconstitutional role. I have big issues with it and always have, but I'm not mentally ill. If a bad cop does something somewhere else and then someone randomly shoots another cop, that's called craziness. And we have globalists trying to destabilize this country and other countries, and we have their own emails and their own battle plans. But I don't need a Soros hack. The UN admits they're doing this. The UN, the State Department admits they spent $5 billion starting 6 years ago to overthrow Ukraine, overthrow an elected government. And they started it talking about police brutality and using cases in the media that Soros and others were funding to make the police emblematic of the evil government. And the government was doing some bad stuff. And the police had done some bad things. But the point is, foreign outside interest came in and stirred it all up to get a shooting war going. Now, shooting wars are bad for business, bad for kids going to school, bad for stock markets. See? We got a big, wealthy country. It's got problems. But we sure don't need to burn it all down, do we, to fix the problem? No. And by the way, if poor people get induced by an evil mastermind to burn down their own neighborhoods, that doesn't help them, does it? I'm going to end up being just fine because I'm a wise person. I know how things work. I've made preparations. So if I disliked people in the inner city, I'd be like George Soros, inducing them with change agents on the ground, foundation funded, to burn this baby to the ground. It's such a sick joke.
So there you go. George Soros is not only funding the migration crisis in Europe, but he's also the money man who's responsible for the destabilization program here in America. And with us now is Margaret Howell, InfoWars reporter, and she's going to shed some light on the Soros plan to influence global immigration now. We're talking global immigration, not just Europe, but also here in the United States. And you have some leaked memos you want to talk about.
I sure do, Darren. So this crisis, this immigration crisis, he wants to capitalize on it, make it the new norm, if you will. And it's about stemming the reaction to the crisis. They want it so normal that we don't even react, we don't blink an eye, so that this agenda can be furthered. It also goes much deeper than I thought. Media manipulation, cash for social justice causes. So anybody that's willing to attack somebody who says the word radical Islam, for example, calling them Islamophobic, he's pouring money into these groups and counteracting people like Pamela Geller, for example, David Horowitz. There's a list of people, the Middle East Forum, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He's attacking certain groups that dare say radical Islam is radical Islam and question the immigration policies that we have.
Okay, and these are also talking points that he wants his organizations and people that he's funding to use, talking points, bullet points, and basically the mainstream media to follow along these lines as well.
Right, exactly. So we know that he's a big contributor to Hillary Clinton. We know that groups like Southern Poverty Law is a big recipient of Soros and his money. So looking at what they're doing and how they're trying to frame the narrative so that we go along with it, it becomes our new norm, and our borders, they collapse, and then mass immigration will follow. We know that Hillary Clinton, she said on Face the Nation that we're not doing our part, that we have to assume more responsibility for Syrian refugees. There's one report, Darren, that says that she would take upwards of 400,000 if she's president.
This is going to be nowhere near what Obama let in. I mean, the next phase is to really, this will be a tsunami of Syrian refugees, and they want open borders. You know, it's funny, you're talking about George Soros, you named the Southern Poverty Law Center, but think about the groups that he funds. Communist revolutionary groups here in the United States, La Raza, okay?
We've
Southern
got
Poverty
them,
Law Center.
500,000 this year alone. You're absolutely right. That's one of their, he's on the hit list of this exposed organization.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that makes me so
it's fine. And like I said, the list goes on and on. But these are all anti-American type of groups. And it's not like he doesn't care about Muslims and Muslim Brotherhood, and he doesn't care about La Raza. What he cares about is destabilization, right? He wants to destabilize this country. That's what this is all about.
Any pundit that uses the word, any political pundit, Liz Cheney's even on this list. That surprised me that they're keeping track of their activities because they're the most prominent drivers of Islamophobia. So, Trump's speech today, it was really brilliant, Darren. I just want to touch on it because he says that combating the ideology is what he's trying to do now. And he said that exposing radical Islam for what it is was a central part of his message, just like in World War II, communism was exposed. And that seems to be, he seems to be at the forefront at countering this. I can only imagine Soros's hit list.
Well, it's definitely going to include Donald Trump, so absolutely. But, you know, we all know from intelligence reports, intelligence agencies across the board, including Donald Trump, they all agree that the Syrian refugee crisis will be a Trojan horse. That's how they're going to infiltrate the Syrian refugees. That's how ISIS is going to come in here and attack America. And they're even saying it could be like a Tet offensive style attack. We know also from intelligence reports, they're already here. Okay, they're active cells in this country. So it's just crazy to think that the more they're just going to allow more and more refugees to come in.
It's almost like they know there's a sinister plot. We want our government to fall. I mean, that seems like where we're headed in this, because we need a global governance. We need a new world order. We need chaos to do that. So
okay, that's exactly it. It's order out of chaos. They destabilize the region just like they've done other countries, and now the United States walks in, or our global government walks in to establish order out of chaos here in America.
It's amazing. And the Trojan horse analogy, you know, that's probably the best analogy I've ever heard to sum up this crisis. So you have people, and this leaked memo, the refugee crisis, and the fear that the interest of migrants fleeing poverty, climate change, generalized violence, and disaster. They want to push this as you know, a humanitarian issue, as a cause, and if you don't go along with it, you're Islamophobic, you're racist. But in reality, you know, we're talking about mass unvetted migrants. And we covered Calais yesterday, you know, 9,000 in one specific camp, and they said, look, we know that ISIS and jihadis have infiltrated this camp. There's nothing we can do. It's about containment at this point. And that's where we are, Darren. We're where France was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. We're right on the cusp of this. And that's why this election is so crucial. We need to look at who is funding her, and somebody who wants this mass immigration, just like they saw in Western Europe. That's what the agenda is for us. That's it.
And the more people learn about George Soros, the more they learn about Hillary Clinton, and it's imperative that we send that message. Look, I want to go over some headlines. This is just a small example of what's going on right now, but I'm going to go over some headlines. Donald Trump, Hillary's plan for more illegal immigration is a disaster for our country. Now, here's a headline from the Washington Examiner. Hillary drafts illegal dreamers to get immigrants to vote. Hillary Clinton's campaign on Sunday announced a program to recruit undocumented dreamers into a voter registration army, even though they are not allowed to vote. I mean, it's totally illegal and unconstitutional, but we all know that Hillary is above the law. Hillary Clinton promises to give illegal immigrants more tax money, yet another incentive to illegally enter the U.S. Trump says Hillary wants to be America's Angela Merkel. A Hillary Clinton presidency would set America on course for a migrant crisis like the one destroying Germany. Again, this is a destabilization program by design. This is not an accident. It is part of the global takeover. Shocker, UN admits migrant crisis plan to overthrow the West. This is the game plan to overthrow our civilization. Y'all need to wake up. This is the end game right here. America accepts 6 times more migrants than all other Latin American countries combined. And as you were saying, they're just getting started.
Right. We've talked about how rigged this system is, and, you know, Hillary Clinton being admittedly saying that she's going after these 730,000 dreamers that can't legally vote. That tells me, Darren, that she's scared. She's going to need some people that can't even legally vote in this country if she can't rig the system. That's what that says to me. That headline in the Washington Times yesterday, it was so astounding. It's like, do people realize what this woman is doing?
Well, I always said that as long as they convince the American public that it's neck and neck, it's 50-50, then they're more likely to accept if she wins and steals the election.
Right.
But now they're even going a step further. Like I've heard the New York Times and other analysts are saying that Hillary is winning by a landslide right now. So it's like George Orwell's 1984. I don't believe that for a minute. I mean, when's the last time you've seen a Hillary for prison? You see lots of those bumper stickers, but never Hillary for president.
You look at places like Scranton, Pennsylvania, where Hillary will go and then Trump will go, and you'll see a Trump rally, and she can barely pack the first floor. And then you look at the same stadium where Trump speaks a few days later, or sometimes, the very next day, and it is so massively packed. You wonder, what polls are they doing?
Well, and now the mainstream media is even going as far as photoshopping Hillary Clinton rallies, and we've seen evidence of that. And they're also saying that Trump rallies have low outcome because they're taking pictures of Trump rallies hours before everybody shows up. So they're really definitely trying to
manipulate the view.
Manipulate. That's why they call it television programming.
That's it.
That's right. So it's very important that you all, turn off your televisions every once in a while, do your own research on the internet, find out all about George Soros. I mean, he's an open book. I mean, the information is there. This guy is not only behind the Muslim immigration crisis. Margaret was just talking about how he's behind the Southern Poverty Law Center. You need to look into those guys. He's funding communist revolutionaries in America. He's funding La Raza, and he's funding Black Lives Matter. That's right. The BLM is funded by a rich old white guy. And for those of you who support Black Lives Matter, you've been had, right? You got duped. And, that's the thing is a lot of people don't understand this. And if they just knew all of this together, again, I keep saying it again and again, it is to divide and conquer the nation. As long as, united we stand, divided we fall. What does America look like if, God forbid, Hillary Clinton becomes president?
Well, going on the Black Lives Matter bandwagon here for a second, the media manipulation of what's happening on the ground there, even coming out of Milwaukee, we covered it today, where an outright lie was told, video was manipulated so poorly that it changed the outcome of the story. And if we continue to see this, Darren, if we continue to see the country ripped apart by this race war that the only thing the mainstream media wants to cover, it's done two things. It distracts us from what's actually happening in major issues. That's the first thing. And the second thing it does is that it requires that we have a force greater than ourselves to come in and manage us because we're just so torn apart. And I really hate to see the manipulation aspect of this. People need to wake up. The internet searching is key. I've been doing that all afternoon, looking at things about George Soros, and I've got to tell you, it's out there if you look for it.